Ever feel like you're drowning in information, trying to keep up with all the big global challenges? You want the important stuff, right? But without getting totally bogged down in endless reports.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Well, that's exactly what we're tackling today. We're going to dive deep into the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs.
Ah, yes, the SDGs.
Think of them as this huge global to-do list, basically aiming for a much better world by 2030. We're talking 17 big goals: wiping out poverty, zero hunger, climate action, healthy planet.
Yeah.
You've probably seen that colorful wheel icon somewhere.
Absolutely. And for anyone trying to understand how we actually achieve these, well, these really ambitious targets, it's vital to see the growing role of multinational corporations.
Right.
And the big question we're digging into today, it's a real point of debate, actually, is whether these SDGs genuinely matter for the managers running these huge global companies. And crucially, how can they go beyond just, saying the right things and actually make a tangible difference?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're basically unpacking a really fascinating debate here.
Yeah.
It stems from an Oxford-style discussion at the Academy of International Business a little while back. Experts really laid out the pros and cons of the SDGs, specifically for multinational leaders.
It was quite the discussion.
So our mission in this deep dive, to give you the essential insights, the upsides, the potential benefits, but also the downsides, the pitfalls that managers in these big companies need to think about.
Yeah, navigate carefully.
Consider this your shortcut, your direct line to understanding the core issues and, well, how these massive organizations could contribute to a more sustainable world. So let's jump right in. What's the case for the SDGs? Why could they be powerful for multinationals?
Okay, well, I think one of the most significant points is that the SDGs provide a kind of unified global vision.
A unified.
Yeah, think of it like a globally agreed social contract, almost, a rule book for responsible business on a global scale. For multinationals, this is pretty critical because it gives them a universally understood benchmark. Something their actions can be judged against by all sorts of different stakeholders: investors, customers, employees, governments. It can potentially build trust, legitimacy, or, erode it if they ignore the goals.
And this is different from what came before, right? The Millennium Development Goals.
Right, exactly. Unlike the MDGs, the SDGs explicitly call out the role of businesses, and not just in developing countries, but in all countries. Businesses are seen as key players. We see this baked into goals like SDG 8, which focuses on decent work and economic growth. A key target there is promoting safe working environments, for instance. Or SDG 12 on responsible consumption and production. And SDG 17, which is all about partnerships to actually achieve the goals.
This is unified vision you mentioned. It's like a common language then.
Yeah.
How does that help a multinational that's dealing with totally different rules and expectations everywhere it operates?
Well, it should make collaboration easier. I mean, think about it. Multinationals are constantly interacting with governments, NGOs, local communities, consumers, a whole range of groups. The SDGs offer this shared set of objectives, a common vocabulary, which can make it simpler for all these different players to actually cooperate on sustainability initiatives. It's a framework that can help align what everyone's trying to achieve.
Okay, so a common language, potential alignment tool that sounds like a definite plus. What else? Any other sort of tangible benefits for these global firms?
Yeah, another key advantage, I think, for you listening is that the SDGs act as a clear roadmap of the major global challenges. They categorize these huge, complex, grand challenges in a way that's become, well, pretty widely recognized now.
Like a shorthand.
Exactly. It's become common shorthand. You even see it with hashtags, right? Like hashtag SDG 13 for climate action. People know what that means.
Right.
And what's really significant is just how many companies are at least saying they're paying attention. Something like over 70% of the world's largest companies claim they're contributing to the SDGs.
Wow, 70%.
Yeah.
That's high.
It is. And you've got organizations like the World Economic Forum actively tracking how well companies are actually integrating these goals into their strategies and operations.
So if I'm a manager, say, trying to figure out where my company should focus its sustainability efforts, the SDGs give me a kind of pre-made list of priorities. Is that the idea?
That's definitely part of it. Managers can use this framework to pinpoint, where their company's operations intersect with these global challenges where they can have the biggest impact, positive or negative.
Okay.
And it also makes it easier to find and connect with other organizations, be they NGOs, other companies, government agencies that are working towards similar goals. It fosters a sense of shared purpose and potentially collective action.
And these aren't just vague ideas, are they? You mentioned targets earlier.
Absolutely. That's crucial. The SDGs provide a clarifying structure. They
Mm.
come with tangible targets and indicators. We're talking specific things like reducing carbon emissions by X% or improving water quality standards or achieving gender parity in management.
So, measurable things.
Yeah. Measurable things. This helps managers define their own company's sustainability metrics and align them with these wider global goals. Plus, that 2030 deadline creates a real sense of urgency, doesn't it? It focuses minds on near-term action.
Yeah, 2030 isn't that far off now.
Not at all. And it's important to remember businesses and civil society groups were actually involved in shaping the SDGs. They weren't just handed down from on high. So theoretically, they should be more practical and actionable for multinationals. There are even tools out there like the SDG Compass and the SDG Action Manager, designed specifically to help companies benchmark their progress.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a pretty compelling case to be made. The SDGs offer this global framework, potential for alignment, clear targets. Seems like a good tool for multinationals wanting to contribute and maybe even strengthen their own business.
Potentially, yes.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Yeah.
With something this ambitious, there've got to be some potential downsides, some criticisms. What are the main pitfalls multinational managers really need to watch out for here?
Right. The flip side, well, probably the biggest criticism, the one you hear most often, is their voluntary nature, meaning there's no real enforcement mechanism, no penalties for ignoring them. They're aspirational guidelines, essentially.
Okay.
And this creates a significant risk that companies might just adopt the framework superficially, talk the talk, use the logos, but not actually make fundamental changes to their business practices. This is what people call rainbow washing.
Rainbow washing.
We've seen similar problems before, right? With other voluntary initiatives like the UN Global Compact, companies with, let's say, questionable track records on labor or environment could still sign up and endorse the principles without facing any real consequences if they didn't follow through.
So rainbow washing, that's a pretty evocative term. For listeners trying to get a handle on the risks, can you maybe elaborate on how that plays out with multinationals and the SDGs specifically?
Sure. Think of it as the next step on from greenwashing, which was just about environmental claims, or blue washing, referring to the UN's blue color.
Right.
Now, with the colorful SDG branding, it's rainbow washing.
Right.
The visual appeal of those 17 colorful squares is strong. It can be really tempting for companies to use them primarily for PR, for enhancing their corporate image.
How so?
Well, they might loudly promote their positive contributions to one or two, maybe easier SDGs, perhaps through charitable donations or a small side project. But at the same time, they might be completely ignoring or even actively causing harm related to other goals.
Okay.
Like maybe a company boasts about its community investment programs, linking it to, say, SDG 4 on education, while simultaneously facing major criticism for poor labor standards in its supply chain, which directly undermines SDG 8 on decent work.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So highlighting the good, hiding the bad.
Pretty much. Or at least creating a misleading overall picture. And that World Economic Forum analysis I mentioned earlier, it actually indicated that only a really tiny fraction of the companies they looked at showed strong, consistent alignment across the SDGs. It suggests this risk of superficial engagement is, well, quite real.
That's definitely something to keep in mind. So beyond this risk of just, window dressing, what other practical challenges do multinationals face if they genuinely try to implement the SDGs?
Well, the sheer scale and complexity is daunting, let's be honest. You've got 17 goals, okay? But under those are 169 specific targets and something like 232 indicators to measure progress.
Wow, that's a lot to track.
It's huge. For any manager, trying to integrate that entire sprawling agenda into a coherent business strategy is a massive undertaking. It's not surprising we're seeing really uneven levels of adoption among companies. And think about implementing this consistently across diverse global operations, different countries, different cultures, different regulatory environments. The logistical hurdles are significant.
So it's just too big, too complicated for some.
It can feel that way, and there's a related risk there. companies might just cherry pick.
Cherry pick.
Yeah, they focus only on the goals or targets that are easiest for them to achieve, maybe things they were doing anyway or things that look good in the sustainability report, rather than tackling the really tough issues where their operations might actually have the most significant negative impact. Like maybe focusing on recycling in the office while ignoring massive carbon emissions from their core business.
Right, tackling the low-hanging fruit only.
Exactly. Which doesn't really move the needle on the big challenges.
Okay, so the challenges are clear. Voluntary nature leading to rainbow washing, the sheer complexity, the risk of cherry picking. If you're a manager at a multinational and you're serious about this, you want to move beyond just sticking logos on a report. What are the concrete steps you can actually take? How do you make it meaningful?
Good question. I think the crucial first step is actively resisting that urge to cherry pick. It means doing the hard work first. Conducting a really thorough, honest assessment of the company's main impacts, both positive and negative, across its entire value chain. Where does the business intersect most significantly with these global goals? And then using the SDG framework not just for reporting, but as a genuine guide for strategic decisions.
Do you have an example of a company doing that well?
Well, a frequently cited example is Schneider Electric. They're big in energy management and automation. They've strategically focused a lot of their SDG efforts on SDG 7, which is all about affordable and clean energy.
Because it fits their business.
Precisely. It aligns directly with their core expertise, their products, their services. It's an area where they can genuinely have a substantial positive impact based on what they actually do as a company. It's not just philanthropy, it's strategy.
That makes sense. Aligning core business with the most relevant goals. What else? What else helps managers make sure the SDGs are more than just, a marketing exercise?
I think they need to use the SDGs as a kind of strategic lens. Use them to critically evaluate their existing sustainability programs and strategies. Are they ambitious enough? Are they focused on the right areas?
Okay.
And then use the framework to identify new opportunities for meaningful contributions. This really means digging into those targets and selecting key performance indicators, KPIs, that directly link the company's performance to specific SDG targets. It requires a deep dive, analyzing how the company's day-to-day operations connect with that broader sustainability agenda.
Can you give an example of that kind of deeper integration?
Sure. Grupo Nutrisa, a large food company based in Colombia, is often mentioned. They developed, I think it was a 15-year strategic plan, explicitly linking their business objectives to specific SDGs related to poverty reduction, zero hunger, and good health, SDG 1, 2, and 3. They set measurable targets within their operations and supply chain, showing a real long-term strategic commitment, not just a one-off project.
Okay, so it sounds like it requires a much more embedded approach than just adding some SDG graphics to the annual CSR report.
Absolutely. It has to be integrated into the core strategy. And one final point, which is really important. Multinationals don't have to do this alone. In fact, they probably can't do it alone.
Partnerships, like SDG 17.
Exactly. The power of partnerships is immense here. Collaborating with other organizations that bring different skills and perspectives to the table. Government agencies, NGOs, research institutions, even other companies can massively boost effectiveness.
Because companies don't have all the answers.
Right. A multinational might have global reach and resources, but it might lack deep expertise in, say, public health systems or biodiversity conservation in a specific region. Partnering with organizations that do have that expertise can accelerate progress dramatically.
Any examples of successful partnerships like that?
Yeah, the collaboration between the pharmaceutical company GlaxoSmithKline and the NGO Save the Children is often highlighted. They've worked together for years in multiple countries to improve access to essential health care for vulnerable children, combining GSK's R&D and supply chain capabilities with Save the Children's on-the-ground reach and community health expertise. That kind of synergy can achieve things neither could do alone.
Okay, so partnerships are key to tackling these huge, complex goals.
Definitely a big part of the puzzle.
So wrapping this up then, for you, the listener, the key takeaway here seems to be this tension, right? On one hand, the SDGs offer this valuable global framework, a real opportunity for multinationals to align with global priorities, maybe find new value.
There's potential there.
But on the other hand, their voluntary nature, their sheer complexity, they open the door to real risks. Superficial adoption, rainbow washing, cherry picking. Genuine contribution really seems to demand moving way beyond easy wins towards deep strategic integration and, as you just said, a serious commitment to collaboration.
Exactly. That boils it down pretty well. And I think for everyone listening, whether you're a manager yourself, maybe you work in sustainability, or you're just someone interested in these global challenges, it's really important to keep a critical eye.
How so?
Look beyond the glossy reports and the colorful logos. Ask the tough questions. Is this company truly embedding these goals into its core business? Or is it mostly just talk? Are they tackling their negative impacts or just highlighting the positive fluff? Discerning between genuine commitment and, well, rainbow washing is crucial.
That's a really powerful point to consider as we look at corporate actions. And it kind of leads us perfectly into a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe mull over. Looking beyond this 2030 deadline for the SDGs, what fundamental shifts in how we even define corporate purpose and accountability might be truly necessary to build a genuinely sustainable global future?
That's the big question, isn't it?
And perhaps just as importantly, what role can informed individuals like you listening right now play in actually driving that essential change? Something to think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.